Season 2 of the HBO series The Last of Us started out pretty strong, bringing in bigger viewership numbers, and even the season 1 premiere of the show did, which means a lot of people watched it, enjoyed it, and through good word of mouth, more people got into it, so there was more people interested in watching season 2 when it first came out. Unfortunately, we saw the same thing happen with the games, where a lot of people played the first Last of Us game, loved it, but when the second game came out, a lot of people who loved the first game hated it, because there was a lot of people who came into the Last of Us franchise just through the show. They never played the games, they didn't know what was going to happen with the story. They just watched the first season and liked the first season and were curious to tune in for the second season to see where things go from there. But unfortunately, we're seeing basically history repeat itself, with a lot of people not liking the second season nearly as much as the first season. This is reflected in sites like Rotten Tomato, where you can see the audience score is currently sitting at a 42%, which is significantly lower than what we saw the audience score for the first season of The Last of Us was. Now, this shouldn't be anything unusual, but now we're seeing people within the media go out of their way to try to attack audiences for this, because in their mind, the only reason why the second season of this show is not doing as good as the first season is because of review bombing. This is coming from Forbes right here. HBO's The Last of Us review bombing surpasses the game's review bombing. And yeah, they don't bother to try to understand why people might not have actually liked this season as much as the first one. The only answer is it just has to be review bombing. And I'm not going to say that review bombing never happens, but one thing you have to understand is it happens both ways. When there's something that's divisive, or at least steeped within the culture, where you're going to see people go out of their way to either give it a negative or a positive score. But when you see the sentiment is shifting more one way or the other, then that's a pretty good indicator that's kind of the opinion of the general population. The Last of Us Season 2 is now heading into the final half of its rather short 7-episode season, and things have been somewhat different this time around. The first season of the show was praised for embodying the game well, outside of a few critiques, and critics and fans essentially agreed on its quality. A 92% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 87% audience score. Season 2, well, something's changed. As it stands, Season 2 has nearly matched a 95% critic score to Season 1, while the audience score has dropped a full 45% compared to Season 2 and is now sitting at 42%. And the one thing I wanted to point out when it comes to this, a lot of the people were upset with this franchise because of the second game, because after the second game and the way Naughty Dog was trying to abuse YouTube's copyright system in order to silence their critics online, a lot of people had ill will towards them because of all that. So there was people who might have been going out of their way to try to review bomb the first season. But like I said, the audience sentiment was generally in favor of it. So you saw that it had a positive reaction amongst audiences. You're not seeing the same thing when it comes to this one, which leads me to believe that the people that they won over for season 1 of the show have since turned their back on them, and that's reflected in their scores. It points out the Rotten Tomatoes one right here, saying a 92% Metacritic. That's what the second game had, and it went on to be one of the most well-awarded games of all time. And just to point out, it doesn't matter whether a game wins awards or not. If people don't like the game, or if it doesn't sell well, then that's ultimately what matters. And it seems like a lot of, even though critics and the access media love the game, the audience really just wasn't there for it. Contrasted with a 5.8 out of 10 user score. Now the sinking of the show's second season has blown by even that low watermark, and that's why it's pointing out it has a 42%. And this article goes on to try to address why this is happening. And they have, to its credit, some legitimate criticisms that people have for it. But the problem with this article, though, is they just try to dismiss that criticism and just go straight to it's a culture war and it's just people review bombing, as opposed to, no, it's all this legitimate criticism that people have for it. Bella Ramsey's Ellie, and this is one of the big ones that a lot of people talk about in regards to the show, and that she just doesn't seem right for the role. I mean, she was a little bit passable in the first season of it, but there's supposed to be a 5-year time jump, and even though Bella Ramsey's is older than the character that she's supposed to be playing, the fact of the matter is she just doesn't look like she fits the role, and a lot of people were saying that they probably should have recasted her for the second season of the show. It even points that out in this article here. One refrain is that Ramsey should have been recast for season 2, and additional complaints that Ramsey is acting differently, usually more upbeat than Game Ellie. Now, to me, that's legitimate criticism. But this article doesn't try to address this or talk about it as if like, yeah, maybe this is a big reason why people are complaining about the show. It just tries to move past it and just like almost as like hand wave it away. It's like, okay, can you believe this is what people are saying? And I'm just thinking like, yeah, that comes across as legitimate criticism. So why not take that into consideration instead of just trying to act like it's only just people review bombing it as opposed to people not liking her in this particular role. So Joel's death, and that's another thing that, and this was something that I was kind of waiting for in the lead up to the release of this, because I knew a lot of people hated that decision in the game. And it's not that they don't like that or they're upset about killing off certain characters. We know TV audiences particularly have no problem with that. Game of Thrones was one of the most popular shows for years, and they were infamous for killing off prominent characters. In fact, it's kind of occurred to me that Pedro Pascal had a shocking death in Game of Thrones, and also in this one too. So when HBO wants to have a surprising death for audiences in a show, I guess that's when they're going to cast Pedro Pascal for that. But it's not that they killed off Joel that people had a problem with when it came to the game. It's the manner in which they did it and why they did it, because in the first game, Joel and Ellie were co-leads, but for the second game, they wanted to push Ellie to the forefront. So instead of doing that in other ways, they decided to kill off Joel in a pretty, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say mean-spirited, but it was a way that was not fulfilling enough for the gamers, and that's why a lot of people didn't like that decision. And it seems like they don't like the decision being made for the second season of this show as well. And that's why they're voicing their opinion on it. I knew people who didn't like that decision in the games are already had their mind made up about the show, but I didn't know if TV audiences were going to be a little bit different about it, who just came into this never having played the games, but liked the first season, if they were going to be more receptive to it happening in the second season. And come to find out, apparently they're not. So just scrolling past some of these other criticisms like this, the Abby changes. I find this one kind of funny because ironically, the people who like the second game are the ones probably complaining most about this. And come to think of it, I think Caitlin Dever probably would have been a better job being, if they recast Ellie for season 2, she probably should have been the one that they cast instead and hired someone else who was a lot more muscular in order to play Abby for the second season. But I don't know. I'm not the only one who said that. I know I've seen people talk about that online, so don't make it seem as if I'm like creating this on my own, but I happen to agree with that sentiment. So just kind of scrolling down, they try to end it off with this to make it seem as if like this is like the main point right here. There's just no way around it. It's a factor. Exceptionally mean critiques about Ramsey's appearance. The only real mean critiques about her appearance is basically she just doesn't look like she fits the role. Hate based on the same-sex romance between Ellie and Dina, and that's not really an issue. Actually, I kind of want to talk about that for a moment, because there was a same-sex couples in the first game. I mean, Ellie, for instance, especially if you played the DLC for that, Bill was gay in the first game. I mean, it wasn't as in your face about it, but I mean, it was one of those things like if you paid attention, you could kind of infer that. They obviously emphasize it a little bit more when it comes to the shows, but that kind of brings up my point though, because a lot of the same-sex couples and I mean, they're saying like that's an issue with audiences for the second season, but it was more prominent in the first season. But this article even says people were more receptive to the first season than the second season. So it's not that people all of a sudden stopped caring about gay couples in it, or all of a sudden we're like, oh, now we don't like gay couples and stuff. It's just they don't like the manner in which they're going about accomplishing that, or way they're telling their story. And that's really the biggest issue with the second entry in this franchise, whether it's the game or the show, and that the story and the writing just isn't nearly as good. A lot of people point out that Neil Druckmann was involved with both of them, but he didn't really have sole creative control of the first game like he did with the second game. And you can almost see that in the final result, where people loved the first one and didn't really like the second one. And that's kind of what we're getting at when it comes to this show. People just don't care for it, but people within the media are going to defend it because they do see this as a culture war thing, because of a lot of the elements that they're trying to push in media are present within this franchise. And while it was acceptable in the first one because it was handled in a better manner, this second entry just doesn't work, and people are voicing their opinions on it. But like I said before, we're seeing a repeat of what we saw happen 5 years ago, where fans who initially liked the first entry in this don't like the second entry. They're voicing their opinions, and people in the media are choosing their side, and they're going to try to defend the side of the position that's going to grant them the most access in the future. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think that the negative reaction to season 2 of The Last of Us is literally just review bombing? Or do you think there is legitimate criticism out there and people are just not happy with the decisions that are made for season 2? Comment below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.